under God.
Mr. Burkhart.
Here.
Mrs. Cooper.
Here.
Dr. Katachu.
Here.
Dr. Green.
Here.
Mr. Huron.
Here.
Mrs. Heater.
Here.
Mr. Reichert.
Here.
Mr. Vognetz.
Here.
Mr. Clauser.
Here. Okay. Green. Several items for public interest. The first is an update on the superintendent search. On the 21st, the board interviewed 4 candidates for the superintendency. We had 11 applicants. Pretty pleased with the quality applicant pool. On the evening of the 21st, after the interviews, we collected all of the data, and at that point, even though we had a second round of interviews scheduled for the 26th, there were 8 board members present, and those board members collectively decided that they had a candidate that stood out, and they wanted to offer a contract, and I am pleased tonight to announce that next week we will have a number of items on the agenda for approval, including the naming of your next superintendent. That will be Dr. Molly Need. Dr. Need is scheduled to begin on November 14th. She wants to give her current employer, who's the Danville Area Community Center, some notice. She's currently the executive director. Dr. Need is a Danville High School graduate. She got her bachelor's degree from Muhlenberg College, her master's from the University of Mississippi, and her doctor in education from Union University. In addition to what she's doing right now, she's been at DAC for about a year. She has also served as the CSIU's Chief Academic Officer. She had a long career at the Memphis Teacher Residency, 11 years, and at one time in her past, for 4 years, she was the principal of the Danville Elementary School. Dr. Need has, we've worked on a contract which will be before the board next Monday. She'll start at $145,000, 3% raises based on satisfactory ratings, can be higher based on merit. And her contract is for a little over 4.5 years. Will run through June 30, 2027. Again, that contract will be made public on Friday when the board agenda is released to the public. So very pleased to announce that Dr. Molly Need will be on the board's agenda as your next superintendent. Yes, sir.
Could you spell her last name?
Yes, N-I-E-D. Two L's. Yeah, N-I-E, and I'm going to remember that forever because the first time I wrote her an email, I spelled it wrong, and she didn't get it for about 6 hours. Then she called me and said, how come I didn't get it? And because I'm dumb. That's why she didn't get it. Now, there are some related issues that will also be on the October 10th agenda. So with Dr. Need coming on board on November 14th, my contract technically ends on October 15th. And I have a clause in that contract where you can extend me by 1 month at a time with 2 weeks' notice. By the way, we're going to miss the 2 weeks' notice, but I'm okay with that. I'll waive that. You will, at the next meeting, extend my contract, if you want, till November 13th. And then Dr. Need will pick up on November 14th. So that will be on your agenda as well. Additionally, originally when I was first brought in, I was supposed to be serve as in a curriculum role, and that didn't last very long because of Dr. Boyle's resignation. And then, so between myself and Tracy Kroom, we're contracted with the district to serve in the curriculum role. That's a contract through Next Century. Well, the public should know that after Dr. Need was selected as the recommended candidate, we have in fact met with her and had a conversation about things that she saw in terms of things that will lead the district forward in the future. And she's made some recommendations to us which will require us to do some approvals this coming Monday. The first thing that I just talked about was this curriculum position is open. What she is recommending to the board is that the board create the position of assistant superintendent. There will be a job description before you for your approval. There will also be an exhibit where you actually create the position. You have a policy that says you are to do that, so create the position. And then also, there will be an organizational chart, and she is working right now with me and with Terry to create the organizational chart and provide the assistant superintendent with some kind of direct reports. In other words, which departments will report to that position versus which departments will report to her. But one task the assistant superintendent will take is curriculum. And many of the tasks that the curriculum coordinator traditionally does academically, including things like professional development, federal programs, and those types of things. So there'll be a number of things in that job description that connect to that position, and also the organizational chart will reflect all of that. So those will be before you next week as well. Now, Terry informs me that the organizational chart is part of policy. Policies have a first reading, then a final reading. So the policy will be on as a first reading. You'll approve it at your November meeting, which coincidentally is November 14th. So that works very nicely, okay? What we will also do, and this will help this process take place, is we have prepared an advertisement for the position of assistant superintendent, which we will release next Tuesday. So the day after you vote to actually open the position, we will release the advertisement with the goal of about a 4-week window for applicants. So they will come in right around November 14th. And that way when Dr. Need comes on board, she right away can engage you and however she wants to do that in selecting that position. Our goal is for you to vote on that position at your December meeting. So picture the timeline. You approve it November 10th. It goes out November 11th. Applications are due around November 14th, so you have roughly a month. Of course, there's some holidays in there, but you have roughly a month to select a candidate, which you would then hire December. And by the way, it's either the 5th or the 7th. Remember, it's scheduled for here on the 5th or the VOTEC school on the 7th, and we haven't finalized that yet, so we'll let you know. If the candidate needs a 60-day communication back to their district, that means they would not start until early February. So Tracy Kroom has agreed to stay in that position through the end of January. That covers you with curriculum services through that time. So next Monday, you will also have a Next Century contract that modifies from the original contract to make sure she's in place through January. Remember, it was supposed to be through the end of the year. So this actually works. And then I will not take the curriculum position. I actually think that's a bad idea. I think anybody who's sat in this chair and had people answer to them or ask questions and so forth, then go down the hall and sit in another office while you have a new superintendent, I actually think that's bad for the new superintendent. So I have offered to the board that I will step away from that. I think that's good for her. I think it's good for the district. I think it's good for the kids. So, but what I will do is Dr. Need has asked if I could stay on a little bit as like a coaching role or a consulting role. And what she's basically asked for is 2 days a week through November, from November 14th through the end of November, and then 1 day a week through January. So again, that will be through Next Century. So you will see that modified contract through Next Century for both Mrs. Kroom and me. Let's see, I think I've dotted all the i's there. You have a new superintendent, you're looking at an assistant superintendent and all that goes with that. You'll have curriculum services covered through the end of January. At the latest, your assistant superintendent will start in February. By the way, if they can start earlier, obviously Mrs. Kroom will step away earlier. And I will be here to assist Dr. Need in any way she sees fit. Any questions on, I have other things, but any questions on that?
Yeah, I'd like to ask for an executive session right now, please.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm okay.
So back from executive session, that was for personnel reasons, correct? Okay. Next, we do have an enrollment report. The enrollment report, and you saw a detailed report from me last month, but you will see what I reported last month continues to be true, and that is you very much have balance as you go through the various schools and grades. It's actually quite interesting because your classes wobble very little. As we reported, you do have, of course, a number of students who go to the VOTEC school. You have now 112 students who attend there. Also a number of students, particularly in the middle ages, the intermediate and middle ages, attending some of your private schools. And you have only 37 students attending cyber charter schools. And I say only because I believe that's true. For a school your size, having 37, that's quite a small number. So that's a testament to your teachers and the programs you have here. Students clearly want to go here to Danville. Several other items. Next Monday, and Terry's reported to you that she will be away traveling. So Laura Reno will be here. The first thing we need to do on that agenda is elect Ms. Reno as the acting board secretary. That way she can take the minutes, call the roll, do all the things that the board secretary actually does. So don't be surprised that your first exhibit next Monday is to name Laura Reno as the acting secretary. Tomorrow, Wendy and I will be passing out budget information to the administrators. It is on your agenda, or will be on your agenda in November, where we will provide you, we, meaning Wendy, me, and Dr. Need, will be presenting you with kind of a background on how we're approaching this budget. Again, administrators will get information tomorrow. I have been communicating with Dr. Need, so whatever I give to them, she's already signed off on, if you will. We're communicating collectively, so that will start that process tomorrow. Additionally, regarding the budget, it was announced just a couple of days ago that your adjusted Act 1 index for the 23-24 budget is 4.1%. Now, what is the Act 1 index? That is the amount under statute that you may raise property taxes to without a referendum. Okay, 4.1%. Now, interestingly, that is also the base index. The school districts, you'll remember a month or so ago, I gave you a detailed financial report. School districts who have less wealth get an adjustment upwards. So for example, Central Columbia is 5.1% because they have less wealth and they get an adjustment. You do not. So one of the things to keep in the back of your head is because of those aid ratios that we talked about being so low in Danville, you don't have the opportunity to raise property taxes as high as you can at one time. Keep that in the back of your head because when you need to take advantage of that. And 4.1% is an index that's relatively high. Also have just a couple of slides for you. I keep this presentation short. I like to do this presentation every once in a while. And the way I frame this presentation is that the demographic of the community may not be what you think it is. This is particularly true for people who have lived here their entire lives or who graduated from this school, who remember it the way it was in 1978. Okay? So what I'm going to present to you are just a little historical information on special education and free and reduced lunch numbers. Go ahead, Mr. Ryan. So this graph has 3 lines on it. The top line, the blue line, starts on the left side in 1997-98. Now the data points are every 5 years coming up to the present. The top line is your overall enrollment. So in 97-98, it was right at 3,000. Today, that enrollment, students attending school here, is around 2,250. So you have dropped in enrollment a fairly significant amount over the last 25 years or so. That should not be lost on you, that trend exists. It's, by the way, not uncommon across Pennsylvania. It's not uncommon in this region. In fact, in the CSIU region, there's one of the 17 school districts whose enrollment is up in the last 10 years. One out of 17. The bottom two lines, the gray line is your free and reduced lunch numbers, and the blue line is your special education numbers. The gray line is relatively flat, comes up a little bit here at the end. The blue line has a very slow trend upwards. Again, remember this graph is over 25 years. What jumps out at you is even though those two graphs are relatively flat, the enrollment graph is coming down. So what does that mean? Next slide, and by the way, last slide. The blue line is the percent of enrollment for free and reduced lunch. Now, I'll remind you that free and reduced lunch is a federal defined criteria. It's not something that floats or that we make up. It's federally defined. And what it has to be applied for. And you'll notice that over time, especially recently, that number has gone up fairly dramatically. The scale's on the left, and I know it's a little hard to see, but those are in percentages. You are pushing 40% free and reduced lunch. Okay, now you'll remember me saying about a month ago that one of the primary correlates of student academic achievement is socioeconomic status. That is true. It has been proven true for the last 60 years. As far as I know, it's not been proven to be untrue. In fact, when we talked to the superintendent candidates, we specifically asked that question about having a diverse socioeconomic community and how are they going to address it. That is true. Nearly 4 in 10 of your students meet the federal free and reduced lunch guidelines. The orange line at the bottom is the percent of enrollment of your special needs students. Now again, maybe less dramatic, but one thing that you should notice is that 25 years ago, that was roughly 8%, or in other words, 1 in 12. Now it's almost 20%, 1 in 5. And I point that out because I think, like I said earlier, everyone likes to look at their community, oh, it's the same as it was when I was a kid. No, it's not. And it's not in two very important variables. Those students who qualify for special education, which, oh, by the way, is an analytical process done by certified people using actual data. It's not let's just pick and choose. And free and reduced lunch, which of course is a correlate to student academic achievement. And I point this out, first of all, so you know what your demographic looks like, but for another reason. If your test scores is as good as they have been, given an increasing population of special education and free and reduced lunch, that is evidence that your teachers and your staff are doing a better job than they've done in the past. They are doing as well as they've ever done, given the students in front of them. And that's why it's important, I think, you notice I look at data. I'm throwing data at you. That is an important part of the picture. I think that's it.
The floor is open for public comment. Agenda items. I guess. Okay, a report from Building and Grounds Committee.
I haven't been to no meetings.
Mr. Burkich is not here tonight. Wanted you to see that there continue to be invoices coming in on the project out at Liberty Valley. Mr. Gump, I know, has been sitting in on the construction meetings, and the cooperation with the contractors is going pretty well, correct? Yes, absolutely. Most importantly, is your educational process is proceeding uninhibited, correct? Talk to them just a little bit. I know they are coming in from time to time to do some of the installation of the unit ventilators, but that's being coordinated with you. So just give a sense
Correct.
of what that looks like.
Okay, so we are currently in phase 1 of that process. So we have 4 classrooms right now that are being renovated with the new heating and cooling systems. And then next week, we're going to then move 4 homerooms out into those classrooms that are completed. And then right now we're on a 2-week schedule. So we have a 9-part phasing program that we're hoping it starts at 2 weeks, but as time goes on, we are hoping that the time to replace those 4 classrooms will get smaller, and we'll be able to get that taken care of before January.
And that's being done because of the supply chain issues of getting those units in
Correct.
before school started.
Correct.
Athletics and Extracurricular Activities Committee report.
I do have a couple things I want to bring up. Now, last month we did not vote on the coaches' code of conduct, but I do support moving procedures and guidelines of the coaches to policy. Also, conditions on the throwing areas for track and field, especially for the javelin. We've talked about this in the past in athletic committees meetings.
We walked walked around and looked at those areas. I know there was a company that came in and looked at the runway for the jump pit. They were there to repair that one night. I didn't know they were coming because Ken was taking care of that. And for the throwing stuff, I don't have an answer for you. I don't know if we've done anything on those or if we're moving forward with anything.
At one point when the stadium was initially, I don't know if you want to call it renovated, we put the turf in, and around the time of the press box, there was a figure provided for the throwing areas. I know Javelin's always been an issue because they throw somewhat uphill, I believe, and there's really no running area, but those figures are so old, I don't think they're pertinent anymore, so it'd be nice to maybe.
And like, to be honest with you, like about the throwing area for Javelin, that's the first I've heard of it
Yeah,
myself.
yeah, there really isn't a throwing run-up area here, which is, puts them at a disadvantage, I believe, as they move on. Although we've had some great throwers. But I'll put it back to Richard. But I do remember there were some numbers before, and I think Ken knows that. I think he reported it to us years ago.
The last we were updated on the swimming record board was that it was ordered. Has it?
Chris,
That changed?
yes, Chris Johns is still working with that. He's seeing that through. He thought that would be the easiest transition. He actually, we had an email from a parent today, and he responded. They're waiting on the how they slide the letters in, whatever they put on the board for that. So when that is, and it's supply chain stuff that we're waiting for that. When that's done, we will get it. He expects, the guy that Chris was emailing, expects to have them within 2 to 3 weeks.
Okay. One last thing. Friday night when I was coming to the game, this is concerning. I did take notice to spectators smoking outside of the stadium. And our 2 school police officers were right off to the gate, off the side there. It's just concerning because school property we're not allowed to smoke on. And then just kudos to the track team. I mean, cross-country teams. The high school boys placed second at the PIAA Foundation meet in Hershey. Rory Lieberman placed first overall. The girls placed fourth overall. Victoria Bartholomew placed seventh. While that was going on, the middle school cross-country teams were at the Lackawanna Invitational. The girls placed first overall. Janie Kontner and Odin Ryder placed second and third. And then on the boys' side, Jackson Dross plays stakes. So kudos to them.
And I heard this today about Rory Lieberman. He went to an individual invitational separate from the team, and it was at, I forget where it was, Lehigh maybe, but his time was 12th in the nation. So that's pretty impressive. Like, that his overall time was that good. It ranks 12th in the nation.
Anything else?
So going back to Mr. Vognet's first point, he asked about bringing the code of conduct back and putting it into
Would
a policy
the procedure
document for the
guide-
board.
in guidelines.
Does the rest of the board concur?
Can I ask a question about that, please? I have 2 copies of it. The one was updated in 2016 when I started researching. The reason that one was updated, it has an addendum in it about prayer with coaches and how that should be done. Or it's not allowed by coaches. It has to be initiated by students. If you would like to see it, I can give it to you. You guys can look at it. I don't think that was in the one that maybe that you had.
I don't recall seeing that in the copy that I was provided.
I'll give you my copy
Okay.
after the meeting.
Now, this is in the procedure and guidelines, correct?
I gotta turn to Jen here on that. Wasn't there just a Supreme Court ruling on that?
Correct, that's why I was preparing
Well-
to, so that's why I was gonna make the recommendation that our office could look it over, make some recommendations, because there are new parameters with respect to that court case. There were, case-specific details there, but we can help make sure that the code of conduct is, up to where it needs to be.
So we'll likely be looking at November to get that before the board at your committee of the whole.
So, Mr. Matthias, I have probably a question about this policy, that we want to make a policy that is will be approved by the board. Would that be, so how does it achieve its goal? Would it be able to achieve its goal, which is change behaviors, change the environment in the athletics area and behaviors? Just many things that need to be corrected, but those are things that I think a pretty vague, a page and a half of paper may not be sufficient, or it's some detail that we need to discuss in the future, or what's the?
So to me, it's the strongest thing that the board can do. You can put in place in a policy document your expectations, your beliefs in terms of codes of conduct, procedures, those types of things. And you've heard me say in the past that my belief in that regard is that that then becomes the basis for an evaluation system. Because you've defined this is what coaching in Danville looks like. And then as administrators and athletic director and so forth go out and observe and evaluate and provide feedback and all of that stuff, you've put in an officially approved board document what you think is most important. So I think that's as strong as you can possibly do.
Okay, good enough.
And in addition to that, most school districts do have an acknowledgement of a code of conduct for, athletics as well as an athletic handbook. So, the athletic handbook for districts that have that specifically outline the expectations, the rules, responsibilities. So there is a more detailed document that acknowledges the code of conduct is just the summary that the employees can sign off acknowledging, here's like the key principles.
That was the key of voting down the code of conduct. I wanted something more in place with procedures and guidelines for coaches and everything.
The board will be informed and discuss the out-of-state trip to Chicotee Field Station, Wallops Island, Virginia.
Just do you have any questions? It'll be on your agenda for approval. It's something that was done pretty traditionally up until COVID. I'm sure you saw it. Same thing with the drama club selection. 6.2.
Do I need to read that, or can everybody?
You do not need to read it.
Curriculum Committee.
So Tracy Kroom presented to you a couple of months ago and said that she was going to put a process in place to start bringing curriculum to you. So I'm going to introduce her, and she has some guests to present.
Do. So, as we said, we're going to bring a band of curriculum to you every month, except for December, because that's your reorg meeting. And tonight, we're starting with grades 6th, 7th, and 8th grade English Language Arts. I'd like to introduce Mr. Snover, who is the principal of the middle school, and I would like to invite two teachers to come on up, Jessica Knapp and Lisa McCarthy. Just a couple general notes about the curriculum as you see it. I did share with you how the format looks. Just some reminders that these are aligned to the PA core standards, and they are fully aligned under the reading, writing, listening, and speaking standards. All three grades use the My Perspectives text series, and you'll see that in there. And each teacher's going to go through, I sent you the curriculum about a week and a half ago. Each teacher's going to go through all the units. Please ask them any questions as they're going through. These two ladies are super experts. And I want to remind you again, it's the first round. So if there's any suggestions you have or something else you want to see or something you would want us to explain next time around, please share with that so we can be prepared. And next month, you're going to see K-5 math. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Snover.
Thank you, Mrs. Kroom. Good evening. We're the first to go here. We're the guinea pigs, and obviously, if you have anything that you would like us or you would like to see added to these presentations as we move forward, please let us know so we can make sure we adjust. So the curriculum writing. We're focusing on English language arts at 6th, 7th, and 8th grades. So this is a department level process. So very quickly, the individuals involved, besides Mrs. Knopp and Mrs. McCarthy, were the other middle school English language arts teachers. So we had Mr. Naiman, Pally Naiman, Miss Nancy Zola, and then in 8th grade, we have Mr. Corey Lombardo and Melissa Nugent, who are all part of writing, each at their own respective grade levels. So the process that we go through with this, really, we're in the 3rd year of this. Back, and I had to write down the dates because it all kind of blurs together. In 2021, that school year was when we began to vet the new curriculum. The curriculum that we were using, a lot of it was outdated. The materials and resources that went with that curriculum were no longer going to be provided by the company that we had been using, that were part of what we do in the classroom. So as a result, we were in a position where it was time to start looking at new curriculum, see what else is out there. So the 2021 school year was the vetting process. We looked at multiple curriculums. Ultimately, we narrowed it down to 3, into literature, study sync, and then the My Perspectives, which is the one that we ultimately settled on. So that English language arts team looked at multiple materials across the course of that school year. They tried out different resources in their classroom. And then again, ultimately at the end of that school year, in the spring of the 2021 school year, they settled on My Perspectives, and that's when the curriculum writing process began across the 3 grade levels. We wrote in the spring and the summer of 2021, and by the 21-22 school year, the curriculum was put in place. That was the first year of implementation. And with any curriculum, it's a matter of putting it in place, modifying, tweaking, adjusting, which we are still doing. We're in the 2nd year. We made a lot of modifications over that first year through last summer. We're now in the 2nd year. We expect that we're going to certainly continue to make adjustments as we work through this year. But after speaking and working with the ELA teachers over the last 2 years, I feel pretty confident that we found a curriculum that everyone's satisfied with, that is meeting the needs of our students, is allowing the teachers to not only teach the reading and writing standards, but finding materials that are at the students' levels, that students are enjoying being involved with. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to our English language arts teachers. Mrs. McCarthy will talk about 6th grade and 8th grade, and Mrs. Knopp will talk about 7th grade.
Thank you, Mr. Snover.
give a general overview here while that's still coming up. So I'm Mrs. McCarthy. I am a 6th grade ELA teacher as well as the 6 through 8 ELA department lead. So first off, to start where Mr. Snover left off, when we picked the curriculum, we first sat down as a 6 through 9 department, and we got a general consensus on, you know, academic vocabulary we're going to use and writing strategy so that we were all using the same terms and the students would have an even playing field in that department. Then after we worked as an entire department, we broke into our respective grade levels and we wrote out the maps, wrote out the curriculum, and we would meet with our administrators, whether that was our principals or our curriculum coordinator. We would go ahead and meet with them and make sure we were headed in the right direction. Then, as Mr. Snover said, sorry, Jess, we revamp constantly. So after we finish a unit, we're looking at what we need to change. Every summer, we're looking at, you know, what are we keeping, what do we need to adjust? So it's a continuous process. The structure of each unit, I'll talk generally first. So each unit is set up with a topic, which serves as the title, and then an essential question. So the essential question is what we tie all of our reading, all of our writing back to. That's the connecting piece in the unit. Then you have your student outcomes. That's, you know, what you want the students to be able to do by the end of the unit. As far as content and material, so I'm not going to stand here and read all the content in each of these units for you, but you'll see that the content, these students are being exposed to a variety of genres of literature. So they're getting the typical, you know, poetry, nonfiction, short stories, but then they're also being exposed to things like media and magazine articles, comics, things that kids wouldn't think are typical genres of literature. They're being exposed to this. So we have that laid out through each unit, and then there's also the writing for each unit. You are looking at a different mode in my perspective. So it's a separate entity than TDAs. It's this mode writing. So it could be something like a personal narrative or an informative essay, argumentative essay. We're still getting the TDA in there, but it's woven in differently than the mode writing that my perspectives presents us with. Materials as well, you'll see novels listed. My perspectives has a vast array of novels to choose from. So teachers are choosing not only novels for whole class learning, but then you have independent reading novels, which I'll get into for 6th grade. And then finally, our grammar and our vocabulary, that's woven throughout each unit and then spiraled throughout the year. So they're getting that throughout the entire year. So 6th grade specifically now, we have 6.5 units. Our first half unit at the beginning of the year, that is our initial iReady diagnostic, the goal setting unit. It's not a piece of my perspectives. After that, we have our 5 my perspectives units. They range in topics from childhood to imagination to technology, many different variety in there. And then our novels. So we have 3 class novels that we do as a whole group that connect to the units, and then you'll see, if you want to go, you can pause there for a second. If you look under the supplemental text, you'll see those 4, Tangerine Holes, Camo Girl, and The One and Only Ivan. You'll see those novels listed in quite a few units. So what happens with that is those are the independent reading novels. So the students pick the novel by choice, and then they're reading independently or listening, depending on their skill level, and then we're doing lit circles with that. So by the time the students finish 6th grade, they are getting 4 to 5 novels that they are reading. That's completely apart from all the pieces of literature that we're reading in class. So when you're talking about getting books in kids' hands, I mean, they're getting 4 to 5 novels just in ELA class on top of all that other literature that they're doing. TDAs, we have 3 TDAs that we do in 6th grade, 1 in Unit 1, 1 in Unit 3, and then at the end of our unit, at the end of our year, our final unit is a novel unit. The exact location of home, we have a TDA in there as well. But along with all that mode writing, these kids are constantly writing. Sure, text-dependent analysis. So you have mode writing, which is when you're told to write a personal narrative, or you're told to write an argumentative essay. Then you have a text-dependent analysis where students are given a piece of text, and they have to take that text and they have to analyze it. They have to pull certain pieces of evidence from it and analyze that text given a prompt. This is the one that is tested on the PSSAs, the TDA. Mode writing was removed, 10 years ago? I don't know how many, 15 years ago? Quite a few years ago. But the idea of having a balanced approach to this writing is a TDA, yes, they have to be able to pick out that evidence and analyze that evidence, but they also have to be able to write a good essay. So you teach them how to be an essay writer when you're doing the mode writing. You teach them how to think creatively. And then throughout my perspectives, as we're doing our units, the students are constantly pulling evidence, drawing evidence, analyzing that evidence. So they're getting the skill of TDA writing, but they're just not writing the essay throughout the units. You put the TDA in front of them and you say, okay, you're using those same skills, it's just you have to put it together with an essay. So they're getting all the skills that they need, so when they get the TDA in front of them, they're completely fine. My perspectives does a great job of providing the skills necessary to prepare the students for the test. Yeah, okay. So that's 6th grade as an overview. Like I said, I'm not going to read every little piece in there, and Jess is going to do 7th. I'll be back for 8th.
I'll wait for him to bring it up. 7th grade is structured a little bit differently. Each of the My Perspectives books has different units, and the books are structured a little differently as far as their composition, what they have in place. We found in exploring the 7th grade book last year, one of the units actually was a little bit more controversial, so we had to be very careful with it. And we ended up using pieces of it to create a new unit. So that was something that we did as teachers, because as teachers you learn that you need to adapt and modify to do the best for your students. So you'll see that in our units we decided to do something a little bit different and more creative with ours. So we start off with classroom expectations and plagiarism with our students. We find that when they come into 7th grade, we're starting to do a little bit more research with them. So we teach them about plagiarism and what plagiarism is and how to not plagiarize. You can't just read it on the internet and copy and paste it. So they learn a lot about that in the first week of school. And of course, they're diagnostic and all of those great things. So we can scroll down. And then we get into the My Perspectives and Generations. So one thing about the My Perspectives books that we really love is that it gets into the heart of what it is to be a human being. And all of their essential questions have to do with becoming a human being. And what their readings all have to do with becoming a good person and what it means to be a good citizen. So in 7th grade, that's what we learn about. So you can see what we do is learn all about, and blog posts is another thing, another one of those great resources that students don't know about that is actually literature. Authentic texts is what we're learning about as well. Another thing that we do is make sure that we're hitting all of the standards, especially speaking and listening in 7th grade is another one. So the students are getting up and they're giving presentations and learning to speak in front of people just like we do in real life. We speak in front of people. So we make sure that we're hitting that, again, academic vocabulary as well as literary terms. We're hitting all of those. We go through a starry home. How can we make a home in space? They love this. They actually love this one. So do we actually, can we live in space? They find this a fascinating unit. Go ahead. Turning points, what causes a sudden change in someone's life? How can we become more in depth? This is actually last year's. Oh, that's okay. I'll keep going. People and the Planet. This is actually where we do a really cool novel section where we actually split the kids into different groups and we have them read 3 different novels and then they give a presentation selling the novel to other students. And we had great success with this last year, actually. And the students were like trying to get the other students to read the book that they read. It was great fun. So that was really interesting. Okay, and facing adversity, this is where the school year ends for us, teaching the students to face adversity and obstacles that they reach. And this is where we're actually working in a new novel this year as well. We'll be reading The Hunger Games in this unit as well. You can see that in your additional unit. So we will be reading that as well in that unit. And they learn about multicultural literature in this area as well. So we get a lot of multicultural literature here. Also, we incorporate the TDA into all of this and the modes of writing as well, and poetry, and folk tales, myths, legends, and fairy tales as well. So they're getting a whole broad range of different types of literature, not just the normal, everyday run-of-the-mill nonfiction. So they're getting a wide range.
So excuse me, Jessica,
Yes.
Lisa, we may have a question or two on
Oh,
6th or
yeah,
7th grade.
sorry, I
before you move on.
apologize.
No, that's okay. Before
Yeah.
we move on to 8.
First thing I want to ask, is that the same one that you've sent us? Because it looks like
I
it's
don't think this is the
No, it
same
looks-
one. Yeah.
Okay, if I could just go back to Lisa for the 6th grade. Sorry, I tried to stop before, but so Mrs. Kroom and you guys are saying that, you have it totally aligned with the standards, but actually there's 4 standards that are missing from the curriculum that I could share with you and to talk about. But here's my concern. First of all, what was sent to me, or all of us, is mapped out for 209 days, and I think we are in school for 180 days, so I'm not sure of the disconnect there or why that is. The other thing that I have concerns about is that we all know that the state test is the PSSAs. Now, this coming year, it's April 24th to the 28th. So just in case anyone doesn't know, the students are required to complete a text-dependent analysis on a given prompt. Now, this prompt will be based on literature, or it will be based on informational text. Now, the only place on your map where you're saying that you're intertwining TDAs and the modes of writing and such, but the only place that's on the map that shows this standards is the last 24 days of school. So that it's mapped to 209 days, and it's only showing the last 24 days of school, the test window actually falls on days 147 to 151. So here's what I know, that, Lisa, I think you're a great teacher, but, you said getting the skill in their composition writing, and then they're completely fine once they get a TDA in front of them. But honestly, the research shows they need explicit, systematic instruction in this, as well as lots of opportunities to practice. And your typical child who's very proficient will get it, but other students are going to need like 25 to 50 practices.
So are you referring to standard S in the writing standard for text-dependent S?
Yeah, it's 1.3.6b, cite textual evidence to support analysis of what the text says explicitly.
So standard S in writing, if you would go down, is the text-dependent analysis standard, the TDA standard.
Right, but also on here, you have hit that one time at the end.
Right, so we do 3 TDAs. The final one is at the end. I agree with that. Unit 1, they're doing a TDA on 11 by Sandra Cisneros, and we are hitting on standard S, which is the TDA standard.
Right, but
And-
you do it 3 times a year.
TDAs, yes, 3 times a year. They're coming to 6th grade with the foundation. We're not teaching them the skills anymore of TDA writing, we're refining it. So we're getting more into the world connection of TDAs and that analytical piece. When they're in elementary school, their minds can't analyze like when they're in secondary. So when they get to secondary, we're going more in depth that when they're in elementary, they're doing inferences here. When they're in secondary, they're coming deep on those inferences, making those world connections.
Right, and I understand what you're saying.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, I think that there needs to be thought on maybe writing that so it's in the curriculum, so people are aware, because if you're just reading it.
So if you, I don't know which curriculum, can you pull up 6th grade again? The TDAs are in the 6th grade curriculum. If you look at unit, I don't know what version you're looking at.
Well, and it also, I'm looking at the one that I was sent.
Okay, so there were updates made to it.
You mean since I,
Okay. So,
well, I mean, you can look at that, but also like
Right.
even in 7th grade, and I respect what you do because I did it. It's not easy writing curriculum whatsoever.
right.
I mean, you have to have skills to do it, and obviously you two were chosen for a reason. But again, here we have in our 7th grade curriculum, my concern is about the same. There are 4 standards missing, so, you know, we need to make sure that they're added. And then again, when you have standard 1.4.7.s, which goes back to the text-dependent analysis writing unit, it's an 11-day unit that falls on days 132 to 143 of the school, but the actual testing window is the days 147 to 151.
I will speak, okay. Yes. Right. It's. Right.
They don't equate to 180.
Right.
Yes. Like a day could be, how long is yours?
We have 52 minutes.
52 minutes. So a day.
Right.
So you're saying that the number of days on there aren't really the days?
No, they're just the number of like time that they will be spending on that.
And if you look in the My Perspectives book, we're pulling those days from the My Perspectives books. And if we did absolutely everything that was in the My Perspectives books, we would have 400 days of school that we would need to be teaching. So this is a toolkit that we can pull from, that we have everything there that we would like to do, but depending on the group of students you have each year, you know you're not going to get to everything that you want to, that we have there. That I need students to master certain skills for the PSSAs and to practice certain skills for the PSSAs, and I'm not going to leave them floundering if they don't understand something before moving on, just so I can get everything done in my curriculum.
Right.
Right.
Which good teachers do, obviously.
Right.
But I do think with the push that, you know, it just seems like, to me, there needs to be more explicit instruction in the TDAs. Not all. I understand the modes of writing. I did the modes of writing in kindergarten. We taught in kindergarten, 1st grade, and even some of the books I saw in yours, like The 3 Little Pigs and The True Story of the 3 Little Pigs, we did those in 1st grade. So I just think that the state is looking for more critical analysis of the writing, and that's what they're being tested on. So I just want to make sure that
I guarantee you that it's happening.
it's just not on here.
And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at, I believe our goal from our last, or what's the steering committee? What's the committee where the parents and all of us are on it? The steering committee, that planning committee, I was on that previously to this. We were looking at creating a well-balanced student, a well-balanced individual, someone that's going to be able to be successful in college, in career, whatever. So once you hit 8th grade and you move to high school, you don't have a TDA anymore. You're done with TDAs.
Right.
You need to be a good writer.
Right.
So you need to have writing skills. So that's where we're headed with writing.
Right.
We
So you're
feel-
saying that even though it's not like explicitly clear in there, that you're doing TDAs throughout and the skills throughout other means, like modes of writing.
Right. You know, a TDA is you have to be able to sit down, read a
Right,
text.
I know, yeah.
Pull the evidence,
Yep.
analyze the evidence. When their students sit down and are presented with any story in my classroom or any middle school classroom, they are reading it, they are pulling evidence, they are analyzing that evidence, whether it's for author's craft, author's structure, whatever we're having them look at. The only difference is they're not sitting there reading a prompt and having to write an essay on it. But when they're presented with that TDA, they have the skills necessary to write the TDA.
Right, and I do know, like, they do it in, I mean, I did it in 4th grade when I was there for that short amount of time.
Right.
But I just think it needs to be a little
So
bit
you
more.
would like it more explicitly stated in the,
Yeah.
that's not a problem. We
Yeah.
can totally do that.
And then, can you explain again about, so like it says 209 days, but what did you say again, Mrs. Kroom?
No, go ahead.
Can you give her that microphone? So
Oh, myself. They take their block of time of their 52 minutes, and they're not doing one thing, and the one thing that's up there. They might do 20 minutes of the one thing, then jump to like a reading, then jump to part of another part of it, and do a writing sample. So you might actually have 2 days in the one day from the curriculum. It says days, it's not a full day, it's how many, what hits the day.
but
They're blocks of time. I'm not sure. Curriculum's just written in days. So I'm not sure. It's like math would be the same thing. They don't spend it on one thing. They might go, like for elementary, do some multiplication here and now jump over to word problems. They're different parts of the curriculum that are in actually one day, one class period. So that is why that says that. And they're correct in that it might be 36 days, it might be 30 days, it might be 40, depending on the class, right, depending on the class they have as they adjust and do what's necessary. And again, we knew we were missing some standards when we didn't know which ones. We are in the process of also mapping the standards. We haven't gotten that far. We just felt it was really important. We got curriculum approved. It's really important we get curriculum approved. And the philosophy we've had, and I think it will be shared, is that curriculum's evolving. These ladies might be back next year at this time saying, you know, we've kind of adjusted this, and we've adjusted our timeline, and we've added a couple more novels, and the standards are in there. So this is going to be a continuous process. We knew we were missing some standards, but we can't map them all right now to get you all the curriculum that you do need to get. Teachers have been working on it for about a year, well, you for 2 years. We have to get it to you.
Right. Well, just to let you know, in the 8th grade curriculum, I know you didn't present it yet, but there's not one writing standard that in what you sent us.
Can I ask a question just from the practical perspective, and maybe
Sure.
it's just a misunderstanding on my part? So for each of these individual units with a number of days, which I understand aren't actual days, you have assigned number of standards which are covered during that time, right? And then what I'm hearing when I'm listening to you guys is that oftentimes there may be classrooms which don't get through all the allotted, quote, days for various reasons, because it's going to depend on the speed of the classroom which you're working with. How do we assure that the children who are not processing it quickly get exposed to all the standards that we're supposed to expose them to and we want them to be exposed to? And this is a general question. This isn't something that's necessarily specific. It's just to clarify.
This will be good, because these are, you're going to have these questions with every single curriculum we bring to you.
Yeah, so this is just to clarify.
Yep,
my
absolutely.
And Lisa, you can jump in, but I think one of the things that when we write curriculum, we make sure that we're hitting on the standards multiple times through multiple units. That's one thing that we try to do. We try to have like nonfiction, poetry in multiple units, short stories in multiple units. So we try to have writing in every single unit. I know I have writing in every single unit. It might not be a TDA in every single unit, but we try to have writing in every single unit. I try to have speaking and listening in every single unit. So that way, if I have to miss the speaking part in one unit because we're behind, which actually just happened to me due to a personal reason, we actually hit it in the next unit. So one thing we do try to do as teachers is make sure that we have all of the standards in every single unit. And that way, if we do miss some by chance, we hit them again. Another thing is if we notice that there is a student who is falling behind, we are very thankful in the middle school we have our extra RTII that we can place those students into. And that's one thing that I do. If I notice a student is falling behind, I sign them up for my RTII. And that's one thing that I work with my students in.
And another piece you're not seeing here is the iReady diagnostic results that's taken 3 times a year. So that gives, right, and growth monitoring in between the diagnostics. So you can see specific standards where students are deficient by individual, and then we can address anything that is being missed there through RTII, through flex time.
So I have one more question that dovetails on something that Mrs. Heater said. So I guess the other piece that I'm just wondering about, just listening to the conversation and looking over what's presented here. So if these don't actually map to the days in which we're teaching, right? Is there some place where it actually says you're going to spend 20 minutes of this, or is this just complete discretion of the teacher, or is this, what's the process for that?
I can speak for myself. So to
Sure.
see what's going on like daily in my classroom, is that what you're speaking to?
I'm just curious if something is mapped to 36 days in here. How would either I know or how do you know that actually you're going to spend 32 classroom periods on it instead of 36? Is that just discretion? Is that how fast the class works? What is that?
Right,
then?
that's, I mean, I can't, that's teaching style, that's the group of students you have that particular year, that's, you know, there's a lot of factors that play into
Okay.
that, to how long you're going to spend teaching something. So I mean, I teach 4 different blocks. I can be at one spot, teaching the same material, but at one spot with block 1, and block 3 is 5 days behind because they just don't get it.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr. Snover, can I ask a question quick? Mr. Snover, you mentioned outdated. What do you mean by outdated in context of creation of curriculum?
So when I was speaking,
Can I just finish answering that?
Yeah.
Oh, our lesson plan, I actually have 2 different, like, so we have our lesson plans, and we also, in 7th grade, we create a monthly calendar of what we're doing. Sometimes it gets way off, but we, like, have it planned out by day. And then our daily lesson plans also tell us what we're doing by day. So that is something that does that. Of course, they can change by the minute,
Sure.
by what happens. And that does happen daily. Like, oh, I did not get to that today. We'll try again tomorrow. That's just teaching. That's how it works.
Sure, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. It's
And-
essentially
yeah.
customized to what the group is and who
Yeah.
the teacher is and how they choose to do it. So I can't dependably say, you're going to take 20 minutes of the period today and you're going to take 20 minutes of the period today to deliver this piece of education.
Just
Okay.
remember, this is something I said a long time ago in a curriculum meeting. This is a guideline, and
Sure.
this is our best guess as to what we can do in 180 days. And you also have to remember that after the test stops, we don't stop teaching.
Right.
We have to plan for 180 days. So even though the test happens, we're still teaching. So that's why there's extra stuff after, because we want to prepare the students for the next grade as well.
Yeah, don't get me wrong, this is for my own.
Oh, I know,
So
I
I
just-
make sure when I'm looking at it that I'm understanding
Yeah.
and interpreting it in the correct fashion.
All right, sorry.
answer
Mr.
your question,
Yeah,
Mr.
sure.
Brooker, I apologize. I don't know if outdated maybe was the correct term to use. The old curriculum was no longer producing some of the resources that the teachers valued in the classroom. Some of the supplemental resources that went with the curriculum, they were done.
What would they be? Workbooks?
Yeah, the interactive reader.
Okay,
So it was the student book that they actually annotated in, that was no
Okay.
longer available.
all right,
And we certainly wanted to move into one that was much more digitalized.
okay,
We could certainly use the Chromebooks that was accessible
yeah,
through websites and
okay. And this is small, and I can't really see, these are some novels up here, correct? You use a lot of novels?
there are not.
And they won't be outdated?
No,
Okay.
of course, the literature itself
Okay.
is never going to be
So I was-
outdated.
okay.
It's the sources and other resources that went with the curriculum that no longer was keeping up with where we were. But we had this in a COVID year, and we know
Right.
we wanted to certainly push students to not only have materials in front of them, but also have access to the digital.
I understand. Thank you.
I do have to give you kudos for the sixth grade curriculum for having both Calvin and Hobbes and Kipling in the same block.
Yeah, yeah. Calvin and Hobbes was the second piece that we got into, and the kids, they went from poetry to Calvin and Hobbes, so
That's
their eyes
pretty
lit
cool.
up at Calvin and Hobbes. So eighth grade, sure. The other piece that was nice about my perspectives is how much the grade levels mirror one another. So if you would look at eighth grade, and I'll just speak from it, it's very similar to sixth grade in that we're hitting on all the same types of writing throughout the units. The only one that's different is in Unit 4, eighth grade is doing a informative essay, whereas in sixth grade we were doing an argumentative essay. But the same thing, you have the novels, some are whole class, some are independent. They have 6.5 units, so they have the 5 My Perspective units. And then they have a half unit on suspense and conflict, which they wanted to carry over. They enjoyed doing that in eighth grade. And then they also have their career unit in eighth grade at the very end of the year. So like I said, eighth grade is very similar to the other two. Questions?
Any particular reason why career planning is in English?
I could
I'm
not
just
answer
asking
that.
for the correlation and how it ended up there. I'm curious. And maybe it's
They
been there a
work
long
with
time. I'm just-
guidance to do.
It kind of just fell in. Lisa, a little bit ago, talked about, you know, speaking and presenting, that our career units kind of play that is a big way that our eighth graders can, you know, they put together not only a presentation, in many cases a multimedia presentation on the career path that they may be choosing, but then they work with guidance and their English language arts teachers to create a presentation where they stand in front of a panel and actually do those standards in front of the.
And that's just, we're not going to see that across science, social studies, math. It's just, it's in English.
No, this is.
That's
this
what I
is
was
a-
trying to
It,
figure.
it kind of goes hand in hand, and our ELA teachers were grateful enough to say we can carve time out of our schedule to make sure that we're hitting this important part, and it, of course, follows with our career plans as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions for us on the ELA?
I just have one. As a principal, instructional leader that you are, what role do you play in all this? Like,
So,
what do you do, Dave, like, with these?
So I was, I worked with the English Language Arts Department as they vetted materials. Of course, I trust their judgment. They are the experts. I am not the expert when it comes to English Language Arts or math. I'm there to kind of help guide them along and point them in the right direction, or at very least to the right people if I don't have the answers, which is a lot of the times. It would be, you know, helping facilitate where are we going with this, what materials are we looking at. I, during this process, coordinated with the curriculum director. This process actually spanned 2 curriculum directors in our district, and you know, worked with the teams. I would meet with them in their department meetings. We would talk about where we're at with the curriculum, how they feel about it, and then throughout the summer, the spring and summer, we would just touch base on the writing process. They would submit the materials to me in a shared drive. We'd look them over. We'd kind of talk about what's our timeline. Are we going to be ready to go? Those types of things. So I wouldn't say I was in the trenches with the teachers. They were doing all the hard work. I was there kind of making sure that everything was on track and ready to go.
Well, I have to give you kudos for being a part of the meetings that they had, and, you know, at least being there, like you said. I think that's wonderful that, you know, to be a part of that and oversee that. But the only other thing that I want to ask is, when you wrote this, was this summer? So it was 2.
It was, yeah, Mrs. Heater, it was initially written, and I have the timeline here. The 2021 school year, it was picked, and then they started writing it in the spring of 2021.
Right.
Through that summer, the 21-22 school year was the first year of full implementation for it. It was obviously throughout the year tweaked and, you know, adjusted as the teachers went through it. They spent a lot of time this past summer rewriting. they're doing the exact same thing as you're very familiar with curriculum. It's an evolving process. It's never going to be just set. We're going to constantly evolve and adjust, and then we're going to do it again. And you know, I appreciate what you said about my role in this, but in all honesty, these ladies and the rest of our ELA department did all the hard work. You know, they make me look good, but I can't take any of the credit for it. It was all them. So.
Oh, I know, and I know how hard it is, and I do thank them for that. But again, you have to have someone who oversees them to keep the process going in the right way. So.
Thank you.
And kudos to all.
So my question to you is, are you okay? First, do you have any more questions about it, about the curriculum? Are you okay for this to come in front of you for board approval next month, or do you want us to pull this back and work on it some more? What changes do you want to see?
Well, I myself, I just want to see the writing standards placed into the 8th grade, at least, and at least the standards that were not included. They need to be in there, I feel.
First of all, what are we doing now? What do we lose by delaying for a month if we did so? What's the issue that comes out of it if we
Well,
push it back?
if we delayed a month, do you want to see math next month? Do you want it to come back to you? I mean, I can send, what we can do is, it's going to take them a couple weeks to work on. I can send it back to you. Are you going to want to discuss it again this time next month? Do you want me to hold off on math next month?
Do we have to discuss it, or can they just email us the changes and we'll vote on it next month?
Sure, but it's going to take a while, they
So we can
said,
get
so that's fine. It's just that I know that I got on the board to make sure that the students are getting the curriculum they deserve. So I want to make sure that it's right, and it's our job as the Board of Education to make sure that the students are getting the standards met. It's right in the training that Harry sent to me, so, so yeah.
Yeah, I'm not committing to anything till I see it.
Yeah, me too.
So then we will work more on it this month, and I will send it to you about a week before.
Fine.
Does that sound okay?
And I have the fullest confidence in you, Dr. Crum. Seriously.
Do you still want math then to come to you this time next month, or do you want to just stick with this?
I'm fine with math.
Math
Yeah,
can come
that's
to you
right.
as well?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Okay, so what are we, they're going to send us the revised version, we're going to review it, and then vote on it next month?
Correct.
Okay.
Can you have it complete by?
It'll take, the biggest one is mapping all the standards. That is that is what's going to take the time, is that's where we knew we might not have every single standard. I mean, there are a lot of standards.
I
So
know.
we knew from and I'd shared that with the board before, that we might be missing a couple standards because we just didn't have time to get to mapping the standards. And knowing we can go back and you can go back and reapprove the curriculum anytime when we add them, but we'll do that. We will map the standards.
Yeah. I just think you probably have them in there for 8th grade, perhaps, but there's just 28 writing standards not documented, so.
Right. Okay, so I will resend this back to you along with the K through 5 math.
Thank you.
Before next month this time. Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Moving on, finance and budget. Nothing.
No report. We just listed them there because they'll appear on the agenda next
Right.
week, so if there's any
Okay.
questions, let us know.
The retirements and stuff.
Resignations?
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to talk about one of those.
Okay.
Are we ready for that?
9.2.
9.2.
Okay.
Jordan Haravi, Drama Director. We just approved the middle school play, I believe, earlier. We didn't approve it, but it's here for us to be
Right.
approved. But I don't believe there's been anything for the high school at this point that's been presented to us for approval. And now we have a resignation of the director. Where does that leave us? At the high school.
Mr. Varhalik.
So in light of her resignation, obviously we can't post that
position until you guys accept her resignation. Now, what we could do, I had spoken with Mr. Nguyen, just kind of thinking about this. What we could do is do an anticipated opening position for her before her resignation is accepted. But as soon as it's accepted next week, then we can post that position officially.
Okay, thank you. The initial question, though, is where does this put us in a timeline for this year? If the middle school's already put a play in front of us, and I think their presentation is generally after the high school, and the high school has not done that yet, where do we stand?
Well, with Mr. Nguyen, I had spoke with him about, like, if there was, where are we at timeline-wise, and that program doesn't happen until the spring, so that would be something they'd be working on right now anyway, from my recollection. So I think that would be something that they would be, working on as we speak. So hopefully, if we can get a new person in this role, they can jump right into it.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate you stepping up in tennis. We don't want you getting stuck with drama, too.
Yeah, that's good.
There is a other piece of information with this. I don't know that we should be discussing it publicly. I know it's late, but I think this is an executive session topic. I'd like to make a motion to go into executive session.
I second it.
Thank you.
Got the Coca-Cola.
Trying to keep fellow board members alive. I don't want them dying from hypoglycemia. I can't guarantee freshness. I'm sorry, Johannes.
Well, I'm too hungry to choose.
So Policy Committee, Mrs. Willoughby and Alyssa Winrick have presented to you the Title I. Do you guys want to speak to that? That needs updated once in a while, so do you want to speak to that? It isn't you?
The family.
Oh, the family engagement, yeah, I'm sorry. When you said, the family engagement is part of the Title I. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Mathias, you caught me off guard. So Dawn Hawes is in charge of all things Title I. So what she does is part of the Title I grant is there is a family engagement piece. So on October, I believe it's the 25th, she will invite families to come and, well, read about Title I policy and procedures.
This needs updated, correct? Needs board
Correct. It
So-
needs updated every year. Every year it comes to the board for approval.
So that'll be on your agenda in a week. 10.2, Guaranteed Admissions Agreement. 10 years ago, I reached out to David Soltz. I had actually been invited to be on a group in Harrisburg, an advisory group. Came away from that with this idea of creating a contract between a school district and a university of having a guaranteed admission. And what I always felt it was is it sent a very strong signal and message to certain students in your school district that, hey, if you work hard and get good grades, you can get into college. And we worked it out with Bloomsburg University at the time of David Soltz was the president there. What's happened over time, Central Columbia, that was 10 years ago, renewed it 5 years ago, and then it was up for renewal. Jeff Groshek, superintendent at Central, worked with the university and improved upon what we had done to include not only guaranteed admission based on certain grade point average here at Danville, but also scholarship money, significant scholarship money, and a guarantee of housing on campus. And if you look at the agreement, which I emailed to you and I think we have on the agenda, you'll notice that if a student gets a 95% or above GPA here at Danville Area High School, they can qualify or will qualify for $7,000 a year in scholarship money. Now, by the way, tuition at Bloomsburg University is roughly $8,000 a year. So it's almost full tuition scholarships. There's a lower level if you have a 90 to 94, lower level yet if you're 85 to 89, and so on. But what this does is it guarantees to a Danville graduate, starting with the class of 2023, that if you have certain GPA, you can be guaranteed admission with scholarships with housing at Bloomsburg University. What happened after Central approved it is the university then started to reach out across the region. We are on the docket to have this approved by them on October 18th, which means I am asking for you to approve it before October 18th. You meet next Monday, so this will be on your agenda for approval. Do you have any questions on what this looks like? To me, this sends a very strong message that you do well in school and we can find a place for you in what, by the way, what is now called Keystone, Commonwealth University, which is Bloomsburg, Lock Haven, and Mansfield. They all fall under this agreement. The Lycoming College and Danville area district agreement, this is a similar agreement, except this one is a curricular alignment agreement between Danville and Lycoming. Bobby, do you have any information on this?
Yeah, so basically what happens is So, and I'm sure that some of you may, Dr. Brookhart might understand the articulation agreement. So basically, the curriculum we have is aligned with the curriculum from that college, and then that course credit is offered to our students in the completion of the course. So that's in reference to what this is referring to here. It's a great opportunity, especially because of Act 158, which we've presented here and there. Might be a great opportunity for us to kind of explain that to you guys, but that is one pathway for a student, is to receive college credit from a college. So that would be a way for us to be able to get that student through in graduation for that particular act that Pennsylvania has passed recently. So.
Best way to think of this is they're here for 10th, 11th, 12th grade, and they go off, in this case, to Lycoming for 13th, 14th, 15th, and 16th grades. In other words, they line up. So this agreement makes sure that those English credits, science, math, and all of that line up directly and give them better opportunities for credits at college. So we ask for your approval.
I think they're both great. Thank you.
Everybody in this board had the opportunity to listen to someone recently whose school actually has kids that are graduating high school with associate's degrees in college already. Make that possible.
So you're referring to Bloomsburg area high
I am
school?
indeed.
So what Bloomsburg has done is they have partnered with Luzerne County Community College to teach LCC classes in the Bloomsburg High School using Bloomsburg teachers. Okay? So this was a model that was designed to do dual enrollment, but to do it at the associate's degree level. It's a quality program. There are kids that are graduating with high school degrees and college associate's degrees at the same time. The answer to your question is, it's a conversation about what you want your focus to be. There's only so many resources, so many classes, so many time slots. What do you want that to look like? If you want them to be overlapped into associate's degree programs, that's a quality program. Kids get good good training, if you will. Also, many of the LCC credits do transfer into other universities of higher education. Here's an oh, by the way. Guess why one of the reasons Bloomsburg University is doing this is because many students, they are finding, are going to the associate's level first and then coming to Bloomsburg. And what that means is they're getting 2 years of tuition. What are they getting here? 4 years of tuition, even though, of course, they're subsidizing a lot of that. And they're making a calculation that getting 4 years of tuition at a scholarship is better for them than getting 2 years of tuition by kids who go to the associates. Am I making sense?
You are.
The answer to your question is, that's a conversation for the available resources at the high school and what you want them to look like.
And you may not know this, but I was under the assumption, and I'm not sure how I came to the conclusion, I believe our state schools accept all the credits from LCCC.
I think that's right. Yes, that is, by the way, what's called an articulation agreement. They marry up into their program.
So if we had a similar program to Bloomsburg here, let's just say a student wanted to get into nursing, would there be a way that they could take their prerequisites while they are in high school?
Possible.
And then they would only have to do 2 years in another state.
So here's what it would mean. It would mean that the high school courses that you offer and the high school teachers who offer them have to be, the curriculum has to be written in such a way, and the teachers have to be, certified's not the right word. They have to be approved by LCCC to do a course. And if that's true, then all of a sudden that course they take in high school counts for both.
With the era of massive student debt, is this something that is conceivable here?
Conversation you're going to have about how you want to utilize your The answer is it possible? Absolutely. It is definitely possible. The real question becomes, is it the right model for Danville?
There's, yeah, a lot more conversations that need to be held before we even be close.
I'm not even sure how it would work. It just
Yeah,
kind of
it's a-
popped into my head when, I'm like, wait a minute.
There are a lot of models around, and I mean, I have nothing against the model that they use. I think it worked for them at the time that they did it, and I think Mr. Mathias is exactly right. It's a conversation to have, but, you know, the devil's always the details. Mr. Mathias, don't they, I think they pay for those classes, don't they?
They do.
I
That's
should know
another
that. I was up there for 4 months, and I'm pretty certain that they do.
Yes, that is definitely a hook.
Yeah.
So to be full disclosure, I created a school district under the career pathway model that was blowing everybody's doors off academically in this region. And what Bloomsburg did was a different way, is a different model, but it was in reaction to career pathways because they were losing.
Can't have that.
I'm not sure that I recall it that way, but that's okay.
I definitely recall it that way.
All right, you would.
Had that discussion with Dr. Wheeler.
Okay.
Yes, Bob.
Programs like that, but a lot of things we use are very similar. It may not be a complete associate. There's a lot of offerings.
So and the reason this kind of popped together in me here is there are several people in my family who are nurses, and a lot of them have come back and said if they had to do it over again, they would go to a community college and get their prerequisites and then go to a nursing school. But if we can provide that education for them here.
You just have to make sure that the students who went that route would be able to get into the choices they'd want.
Well, I'm throwing that together with that guaranteed admission thing, and yeah. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. Any board concerns and items for the next meeting agenda?
There's one thing I was going to bring up tonight, but Ms. Reno, it's next week she'll be here, Harry?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to hold it till next week. She does transportation. It has to do with the Route 54, Route 11, who's transported and who isn't, but it's better if she's here. And I spoke with her. I talked to Harry first. He was okay that I did that. Just want to get into a little more discussion about it.
At some point, not to add things, but we should at least think about whether we're doing anything additional about fuel increases for the busing companies to keep them in business. So we should at least think about it and have some idea of what the options were if we were to want to address that.
Absolutely.
Any other comment? Public comment? Ma'am?
Hi, I'm Tina Bartholomew, and I'm the girls' head track and field coach. And the comment that you had made earlier regarding the athletics was regarding the Javelin runway and some of the facilities. And Yes, probably the amounts that we had quoted way long ago aren't even effective right now. But I wanted to bring to your attention, just in case you don't realize, I believe we are at the end of our 5-year warranty with the track facility. Does anybody know that?
I know at Central, our warranty on our track was, I think, 12 to 15 years.
Yeah, so I thought ours was too.
Yeah, I would have thought it'd be longer, but I'm not sure, Ms. Bartholomew.
Okay, I'm not either.
know.
I'm
I know it's 10 years.
for some reason I'm thinking it's actually 5.
You may be right. I know, having had some background with this, Mr. Mathias I know has too. Turf was longer than track, at least
Right.
the one we dealt with, because they tend to wear.
We can have
Right.
Mr. Burkich look it up.
Yeah, I'm bringing that to your attention because, 5 years ago when it was a brand-new facility and quite beautiful, there were a lot of things, it was just, eye candy. It looked great. We're 5 years into it now, and for the last probably 2, some serious issues have occurred on the track. And, with COVID and many other things that have occurred, they have not effectively been addressed. And so we had the league meet this past spring, and we had to, in an emergency, get some things repaired. And although they were fine for the actual league meet, they're still not, I would say, adequate for what we have here at Danville, or what we should have. What I've seen since those repairs have been made, we have some actual holes, probably at least dime size, at the 250-meter mark that we've discovered. Mr. Albertson, he's brand new, with us. We've shared some of this information, but we've brought this up. Mr. Brandt has actually brought it up, saw several things happening too at the track. But the years are going by, and if the 5 year is up this October, it's been something that I've mentioned long time ago, and it's not been looked into. I'm pretty sure, and now we're in a time crunch with that.
So I'll have Mr. Burkich look it up. I'll have him meet with you and Mr. Albertson. You can walk around the track. You can point it out to him. He won't take a can of spray paint to spray paint the holes. Okay?
Okay.
That's a joke.
Right.
But
So-
yes, if you can show it to him.
And Mr. Albertson said that, someone came one day out of the blue, and none of us. Mm-hmm.
Purple? Maybe purple? Purple?
Ken is on it. So those people that came to fix
Mm-hmm.
they came because that was coming up the edges, so they came to repair that. I showed up for a 4 o'clock middle school football game, and the guys are yelling. I don't know if they got to. They're also going to repair the runway pole vault as far as. So Turkish is on it. We met with that company. Different options. We already met way more about tracks than I do. So he knew what needed to be repaired. As far as I know, it's already on the burner to be done.
Okay. Well, I'm just, and I know everything takes time. My concern is, as we speak, there's more deterioration in the track. That's all I'm saying. And, we see it daily right now. We were on the track today, and I know it was a very busy weekend with homecoming, but the amount of paper and wrappers down there, as well as grass on the actual track, I know it all, like I said, takes time to get cleaned up, but that's all laying right there. And we still currently have moss growing all around the exterior of the turf, which butts up right up to the track. So, You know, I was just mostly concerned because I thought the 5-year term was over, or is about to be over, and it's just going to cost a lot of money to repair if it is officially up. So just wanted to make the board aware of.
When I mentioned the field events earlier, it was not Mr. Burkich that brought us figures, it was Mr. Johns, I remember. Not that those numbers are that relevant anymore. That's been quite a few years.
No, they're not. No. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Adjourn.